I'm gonna go with Zula, right?
Yes.
Zula. So, Cupcake Girls is our connection, and they're a great nonprofit for
Hmm.
sex workers. And my podcast is kind of celebrating sex workers. And by celebrating, what I mean is just like giving a platform to have a voice because, I'm actually out. I don't think you are. Or should I say that? I can always edit all this stuff out, but
Okay.
because different names, you're talking about different names, but I just want to say that
Yeah.
I'm out. But it's weird when you're out because
Yeah.
you still like can't decide time or place, like time or place
Yeah.
when it's actually appropriate to bring it up,
Sure.
new
Yeah.
people. So like when you're out, you're not always out still.
Yeah. No, it's complicated for sure.
It's
And
very complicated. It's
yeah.
very complicated.
And I guess for me, like I'm pretty straightforward with most people about like what I do and everything. It's not really a secret. The only thing is I work in little like education, and apparently I can legally get fired for being a sex worker. And so that's really the reason that I'm a little bit cautious about that. So under Oregon law, I can't be harassed at work for being a sex worker, but I can be fired for being a sex worker.
Oh, that's so
So
backwards.
yeah,
I
it doesn't
mean,
really
I
make sense.
mean,
Uh-huh.
it's not that it's backwards, it's just that it's
Yeah.
so like jumbly and
Right. It's like,
yeah.
okay, I have some protection, but like not full protection. So yeah, it's just kind of, but yeah, I really love that you have this platform where you're kind of discussing all of this stuff because it is all very jumbled. The legality related to sex work is extremely jumbled and makes no sense for the most part.
No.
So yeah, so this is just one of those areas. Like since I'm working with kids, I have to be kind of
Yeah.
careful because I could get fired for being a sex worker.
So like how old are your kids?
So I'm working with in one of my jobs, I'm working with middle schoolers and high schoolers. And then in the other job, I'm working with 3 to 7 year olds.
Okay. Okay. It's amazing though, like how we're taught to be so open-minded about other topics.
Yeah.
At a young
Mhm.
age, 3 and 7 would still qualify for people who are very aware of like,
Mhm.
like yeah, political topics. And
Yeah.
yet we're still not quite there in this arena.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so crazy. But three is
Absolutely.
young, 5 is young, 7 I think is kind of where I would think would start.
Mhm.
7, yeah.
Right.
Where
Yeah.
are
I
you
really
mostly? Where are you mostly? Like with them or the older kids?
So the younger kids class, I'm like developing the curriculum. It's a dance class. So I'm teaching them. I have a background in like
Oh,
ballet,
I love
jazz,
dance. I have the
a lot
same.
of
Yeah,
different things. Yeah.
same.
And so yeah, I'm just teaching them. It's story based, like dance class. So it's gonna be super fun. So I haven't actually started working with the kids on that one yet. That starts in July. And then the
I bet
other
you're
one,
good. I bet
oh,
you're good.
thanks.
I bet
I
you're good. Yeah.
try.
I want to see some
Um,
of that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Keep going. Keep going. I want to hear all about
cool.
your work. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other job, I've been working, it's like a basically educational summer camp for middle schoolers and high schoolers, teaching them about mental health, nutrition, financial wellness, like urban agriculture, and then fitness. I'm in the fitness section. So I collaborated with a team of other people. We basically wrote a textbook together. And then next week, we start actually teaching the classes, and it's going to be like video broadcast to other schools. The textbook is being like sent out to other schools. So it's like not just centered in Portland. But yeah, so I'm going to be on TV, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah, that is really
For
cool. Really
that.
cool. So this is a summer camp kind of thing, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
How long is it's like 2 months or something? Or like a
Yeah,
month?
it's I think it's 6 weeks.
Oh,
So
very cool. So when do they film? They film at the end?
Well, they filmed during the whole
Oh, the
class.
entire thing. It's
Yeah.
like a documentary.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like they're filming us during the class, and then other schools are going to be using that. So it's like we're teaching the class, and then other schools are going to be using us teaching it and just like showing those videos to the students,
Ah,
basically.
I get it. That's really
Yeah.
cool. So yeah, you got to
Yeah.
be on your A game. Are you doing dance?
Yeah,
Are you
definitely.
doing dance on that one?
No, it's for fitness. So
Oh,
I'm
so
just
it's not integrated?
no, well, there is actually a section that I'm going to be talking about dance during, but it talks about like there's a section on just like body mechanics, so like moving heavy objects safely, stretching, that sort of thing, and then we're going to talk about like strength training in one section, cardio, just like basically in the fitness section, we're just talking about different exercise types and helping kids like get the information they need, break down like myths that they and just like popular things that they might have heard that's not true about fitness, and just kind of like giving them
Alignment
that a
and
healthy
muscles.
approach to
Yeah.
holistic wellness, essentially.
It's like a whole curriculum that they set out for you guys already.
Yeah. So we wrote like we had a crazy deadline. I wrote a textbook chapter like basically overnight because my partner like kind of dropped out, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, it was
Oh, how many
kind of a
pages
crazy
was that?
deadline.
Like a whole like this?
Um, yeah, it's like 30 pages long,
Oh,
the
wow.
textbook chapter that I wrote by myself. But
Good for you. You really care. You really
yeah,
care.
yeah,
You get
no,
paid for that?
not for all the hours I put into it.
Oh
But
yeah. So you
yeah,
really do care. That's really impressive. Really
yeah, it's something
impressive.
that I'm passionate about. So yeah, it's important to me regardless of whether I get paid for all the time that I put into it, which I should. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, no, you should, but I'm
yeah,
glad that you're doing it anyway, you know?
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
so I
kids, why kids? Yeah, why kids?
yeah, I guess I've been interested in education for a while. I was a piano teacher for 6 years, and so I've worked with kids in a number of different contexts, and it's just really
Oh, so you're very
important.
comfortable and oh, so you got it
Yeah,
down. You got it down. Cool.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But I just think there are a lot of ways that kids could be helped along the way and like not have similar issues as adults that a lot of people have. So it's just like with education, it's like you can like kind of go in there and be like, okay, let's like stop these harmful things from happening and like help kids be able to deal with things and like learn how to handle life, better instead of having to deal with all that once they're adults. So
Mhm.
yeah, it kind of feels like almost preventative in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, obviously there's a lot of different aspects to education, but with this program specifically, I feel like a lot of it is just helping them to uh, be able to have access to information about how to have a healthy life in all areas. So yeah,
Overall, yeah.
right. So that's why I'm pretty passionate about that. So
You had a someone that you're supposed to write the chapter with, but it sounds like there's a huge group of people, like sections,
mm,
like the agriculture
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
and
there's just like a couple of people in each sections. There's like a couple of people for urban ag, a couple of people for like nutrition and so on.
oh, you've met them all and all that?
Yeah, we've been doing like Zoom meetings for the past 2 weeks, just
Oh, cool.
collaborating. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
like basically they mapped out 8 hours a week for us to just meet over Zoom and brainstorm and come up with ideas of how to teach these subjects, how to like kind of tie them together, and
Tie them
that's
together.
mhm.
Tie them together. Yeah. So this is like kind of a full time. Like, so are you out of the industry for?
No, I'm still dancing.
Oh, so you used to strip or you do strip now?
I do strip now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So then what
Yeah,
is
that's
it
my
like
main
for
source
you?
of income right now, I would say.
That's your main source?
Yeah, these are
Yeah.
like
Okay.
passion projects,
And
I
then you
guess.
definitely have a lot of investment. So you have a lot of energy, like to juggle
Yeah,
both, to juggle
I do.
both.
Mhm.
How do you turn it off when you're, because I ask myself this question even just to myself, like
Yeah.
compartmentalizing and stuff, and I'm with a group of
Mhm.
people who may not necessarily know like what goes through your mind like when you're switching gears and
Mhm.
you just had a really long night, and what's it like for you? I mean, I know what it's like for me, but I want to hear about what it's like for you. You know?
Yeah, I guess it just really depends. I feel like I can push myself to a certain level before I feel overwhelmed, and then all of a sudden it's like one thing will push me over the edge, like like I have a couple really bad lap dances in one night, and it's just like, wow, like this is super overwhelming because I've just got so many different pressures. And then it's like I go to that job, which is hard in its own way. So it's kind of like it's hard to balance all of these different things at once. It's important to me because there are a lot of things that I'm passionate about and that I want to pursue, and I feel like dancing enables me to do that without having to, like, work a traditional 9 to 5 job.
Right. The
Right.
flexibility.
And especially, so along with a lot of other dancers, like I have a lot of like medical and like mental health issues and stuff that make it difficult for me to like do a traditional 9 to 5. So that job has just kind of enabled me to just really just make it through, and then in addition to that, I have other things that I like to do. But yeah, it can be very difficult to balance all of those things and to deal with the hard things that come with each different type of job, I guess. So,
Do
and
you
at the same
ever
time,
look
I'm
at the
also,
time? Oh,
oh,
sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
oh no, that's okay. And then I'm also in the process of starting a nonprofit. I don't know if they
No
mentioned
way.
that, the cupcake
No, they
girls.
did
Yeah, they're
not. They did
okay.
not.
Yeah, they've been really helpful in that process. But yeah, I'm hoping to be able to get that started in August. That's kind of my goal date. But basically, my nonprofit is starting out offering just like free fitness classes, Pilates classes that I'm going to teach, free like healthy cooking classes with, then there's like a meal kit with like the recipes and the ingredients and everything that the participants get to take home. As well as I'm hopefully going to be able to get free physical therapy on some level. I'm working with an organization on that too. But basically offering this to dancers, sex workers, victims of human trafficking, just like those really high risk occupations in the community, where there's often a lot of trauma, often a lot of like loss of mind body connection. There's not really a strong community. There's some community, but I feel like the way that clubs are structured, at least, it's really set up to kind of pit dancers against each other, versus making them feel like they can really be a
They're a
team.
community and a
Yeah,
tribe.
right. So I'm trying to kind of establish that sort of community, and I'm starting small, just fitness classes, cooking classes, hopefully physical therapy. But I'm hoping that it can like expand and become something bigger.
Oh God, I wish it for you too. It's because I mean, come on, like it's
Hmm.
mostly like the connection that I'm hearing more than the actual activity itself. Like I know
Yeah.
that stuff is really important, like the fitness
Hmm.
and the cooking and all that. Like,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's like the friendship is like so
Yeah.
important because just like
Hmm.
you said, like I've never worked at clubs. I've done like probably I, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. I'm just gonna really
Yeah.
be clear about that. But I feel like I've done like the hardest, yickiest stuff about the sex work
Hmm.
industry. So
Uh-huh.
I never got to strip, and I'm saying that like in a positive way. I never got to strip, but like what kept me away though was just always just like too much of the cattiness and
Mhm.
the like how do you
Interesting.
handle that? Like, oh my God, like it's enough
Yeah.
that men will compare you, but like
Mhm.
then you internalize that and then you take it out on each other.
Yeah.
Ugh, God, it's
Yeah. No,
horrible.
that's really interesting to hear. Yeah, I feel like I've had different experiences at different clubs and
Okay.
places
Okay.
as well. Um, but yeah, so when I first started out in Portland, there was a club I was dancing at. Like honestly, I'm surprised that I got in there. They don't usually, so they it's a very like quote unquote elitist club, and I was a very new dancer going into that club. So I felt like at first just kind of like, oh wow, I got into this club, like this is so great. But it felt like the way that the club was structured, they were trying to maintain this sense of hierarchy between different groups of girls. So when you start out, you're like an evening shift girl, and everybody wanted to be a night shift girl. And then everybody who was night shift wanted to be a VIP girl. And so it was like they had this hierarchy in place. And pretty early on, I remember having a conversation with someone where they were telling me, oh man, like I just really want to be a night shift girl. So I just asked management like what I could do in order to be night shift. And they told me, oh, just always show up on time, show up with your hair and makeup perfect, show up like, basically just told them everything that the club would want them to do in order for the club to make the most money. And I remember kind of like coming out of that conversation being like, I'm not sure that's how it works. And by the time I left that club, I knew that wasn't how it worked. The club, wasn't promoting people based on their virtue as a dancer, like not really even whether they were a good dancer or not, certainly not whether they were showing up consistently, because I knew people who had been there a couple weeks and got promoted to night shift, whereas there were people who'd been trying for months and couldn't get promoted. So, but it was like the club was just using this hierarchy structure as a way to control dancers and get them to try and like act in the way that they wanted. And it was so strongly, they like maintained it so strongly. I remember one time I went up to the dressing room to like eat my dinner in the middle of my shift because I worked 9-hour shifts. And there weren't any seats available except in this like section off to the right. There were like 10 chairs open. And so I just sat down in one of these chairs. I was like, I don't know why these are open, but and then one of the managers came over and told me, hey, you can't sit there. That's a VIP chair. And so I had to stand in 6-inch heels and eat my dinner while 10 girls who weren't even there, their chairs just sat empty. But that was just like the level to which the club tried to maintain this hierarchy. And then it was like a lot of the night shift girls would like treat the evening shift girls like they were, lesser or like, I don't know, I was like very cliquey, I guess, in a way. And then the VIP girls were like it was very cliquey between them and like the other night shift girls. And I remember just looking at that and being like, you realize this is what the club wants. Like the club wants us to feel like we're in competition and like we are separated, and they want that so that they can keep controlling. We're not gonna, be able to band together or like ask for anything because we're all just, being cut into different sections and we're being controlled. And that just kind of was sickening to me to like see that,
It sounds like you knew the root cause, but
Mhm.
others didn't.
Yeah, not everybody seemed to be aware that that was really being manipulated by management. And I mean, obviously, like management couldn't force them to act that way, but it was like the structure was in place that was making some people feel like they were superior to other people. But it was created by the club for the club's gain, essentially. So that's it. Just kind of feels like that's how clubs are in general. I mean, any club that I go to, I'm very happy with the club I'm at now. It's a much less toxic environment. But even there, like anywhere you go, you have to pay to work there. You have to pay for the opportunity to work there. You have to pay for your own supplies. Shoes are $100 to $200 a pair. Outfits, run, $40 to 200 plus. You're responsible for all of those expenses yourself. And then ultimately, you do private dances, the club takes a cut of that. What's the club really providing that is
Except
really
for the space.
Yeah, I mean, they're providing the space, but they wouldn't have a club if we weren't there dancing, They wouldn't be making money if they wouldn't be selling drinks if people weren't coming to see the dancers. So it feels like it's a very unfair structure of the system because it's set up for the club's gain, and very little consideration for any sort of rights for the dancers. And in a lot of clubs, it's not even a safe place for the dancers to be. And so, yeah, like on one level, I think I go into the club and I feel grateful that I can work somewhere within the sex work industry and be fairly certain that nothing horrible is going to happen to me, because there's like security, and I trust the people at my club who work in security. I trust managers at my club. They're bartenders as well as dancers. So they kind of work all the different levels, and so they tend to be a lot more interested in the good of the dancers versus management at other clubs I worked at. But even so, just the structure, regardless of who's in management, it's the club structure. But anyways, I do feel grateful going into the club and knowing that, like, I feel pretty safe working there. I feel like that's not something that a lot of people who work in the different areas of sex work can say. And and then I'm like, well, why? Like, why not? Like, I feel like I have it about the best of people within the sex work industry. I mean, I guess like doing cam work, a lot of that is like, you're on the other side of a camera, and for a lot of people that's like fairly safe. But at the same time, like, it's just like, if this is as good as it gets, and it's not that good, like, you need to change.
I know. I think about like when you were talking about your experience, I think about like how maybe you're adaptive and it's safe because you know it. Like there's always that to think about, not that I definitely want to discredit anything, but like, but I do when I imagine it, I think about like where you are and the state you're in. Like, yeah, there's definitely like some safety for sure, but like I know I've convinced myself that things have been better than they were, and that's never easy.
Yeah.
So I sympathize.
Right. And I guess when I say nothing horrible is going to happen, that doesn't mean that somebody's not going to cross my boundary, that somebody's not going to touch me in a way I don't want to be touched, that somebody's not going to, treat me in a demeaning way. Those things happen.
Who has your back when that does happen? It's security, right?
Well, I'm really expected to handle that on my own. I mean, if I went to security about every single thing, like if every dancer went to security about every single thing, they'd have to have a lot more security to handle all of those.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Situations. Oh, yeah. And I guess like when I say I'm grateful for what I have in that club, again, it isn't that good. It's about as good as it gets, but it's still not that good, so and I mean, I love the job, I love dancing, I love the industry. It's just the clubs, the way
like you would love it so much more if there were like respect and fairness and like
exactly.
I agree with you 100%. I would do it too if it was like that. I mean, I say that, but then I'm scared too. I get scared about stuff. So
yeah, I understand that.
And I'm sure if I was used to it, it wouldn't be as scary. That's something I always say to everybody, that like once you get used to something, it seems easier.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just how it is. Like, have you ever spent time apart from because I know you said you're working now, but like have you ever spent like a long time apart and then you're like dreading going back? Has that ever happened to you? Because that's happened to me a lot.
Definitely. Yeah, I had an injury a few months ago. I dislocated both of my shoulders, and wasn't able to go back to the club for a couple of months. And then I felt.
How did you do that, from a sport or from dancing?
No, I have seizures.
You do?
I just had a really bad seizure and dislocated both of them. So then I wasn't able to dance for a couple months. And when I went back, like I just remember feeling a lot of anxiety, like going in. And when I went back, and once I got back in the swing of things, it was fine. But yeah, I was kind of thinking about what you were saying earlier in relation to like it feeling like a safe space because I'm used to it. And there definitely is some truth to that. So I've actually only been dancing about a year now. So actually June 23rd, 2021 was my first day ever stripping. Um,
Oh,
and
congratulations for making it
Thank
so
you.
far.
Yeah, my stripperversary is coming up. I was just thinking about kind of two experiences, like one that was early on last year, and then one that happened recently at the club, and just kind of the difference in experience. Like so when I started out, I was in Missouri. I was stripping in Missouri. And I did it there for about a month before I moved to Portland. And so I was just remembering like pretty early on there was this one time where I was talking to this group of people, and one of them, like, we were having a really good like intellectual conversation. I'm not sure what we were talking about, just something a similar shared interest, and then that person's friend like kind of got up and was like, hey, I want to do a dance with you, talking to me. And so we went and did a private dance, and he immediately we got in the room, closed the curtain, and he immediately tried to he reached his hand inside my panties and tried to finger me. And so I didn't really have any instruction on what to
What to
do
do?
in that situation. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to end the dance, if I was supposed to continue. So I just pushed his hand out and told him not to do that. And then basically throughout the rest of the dance, I just finished the dance, but I just basically was dancing with like my hand over my crotch, like,
The
you
whole
know, keeping
time.
his hand out. Yeah. And then when we went back, he took his fingers and put them in front of all of his friends' noses, and was basically just like bragging that I had let him finger me in the dance. And the person that I had been talking to, having a good conversation, wouldn't make eye contact with me, wouldn't talk to me after that. And so I just felt very shamed by that. And
By the guy that wouldn't talk to you?
yeah, right. And
How did he make you feel like you did something wrong?
right. So basically and it might have just been my interpretation, but it kind of felt like he was like thinking less of me, essentially. Like he didn't think that we could talk on that level anymore, because I had
I
let
think
his
that's how he wanted you to
down.
feel.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it
And
worked. That brilliant plan
yeah,
worked, which is really
yeah,
sad to me because
right.
it shouldn't have made you feel that way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I was thinking about that in relation to like similar-ish thing happened recently. I was dancing at the club. I was having a good conversation with somebody. It was a like PhD neurology or PhD student in, yeah, I guess it was
He's a
neurology.
student?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so we were talking about like the area that he was focusing on in neurology and having like a really good, like high level conversation, you know, and then he wanted to do a private dance. And so we went in the back, and it was like we were talking with like mutual respect when we were out there, but as soon as we got back there, it was like I started the dance, and then he asked me, he was like, hey, can I touch your, and he didn't say vagina, of course, but he said a different word. And I said no. And then he said, oh, please, and was like begging me. And I said no. And so then I just moved on and kept doing the dance. And then at one point, I felt him reach his hand, trying to reach it down inside my panties. But after like a year of experience, I had a very different reaction to the last time. So I grabbed his hand, moved it, and just like dropped everything, stopped dancing, and just basically like made eye contact with him and said to him, baby, I told you not to touch me there. If you do that again, I'm going to end the dance. And I just made sure that he understood that I was being clear. I was communicating, like, if you touch me again, this is over. You're not getting your money back. And then I just went back to the dance when he confirmed that he understood, and he didn't try it again for the rest of the dance. So it's like one of those things where I've just had to learn
You
how
learned.
to protect myself, how to make sure. And he knew I wasn't bullshitting him. I wasn't. If he'd done that again, I would have just gotten up and left. And one of the things that I do appreciate about my current club is I know security would have backed me up if he tried to make a fuss. they would have said nope. There's a camera above the dance. If they had to review the footage, they could review it and say, yep, sorry, no refunds. So yeah, so it was just, I feel like I have a lot more power now, just in knowing that I can enforce those boundaries and knowing how to enforce those boundaries. So yeah, that's something
Yeah,
I
I bet you
definitely
felt a
had to
lot
learn.
better. Yeah, you must have felt a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, it still feels, shitty when you feel like you are having a discussion, you have that mutual respect, and then people decide not to treat you with that respect. But I still, you know, I feel like I know how to handle that better than I did early on.
You felt like you kind of bonded with him outside
Mhm.
of what happened previously, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually excited to do a dance with him. And
Yeah.
then,
And then he
yeah,
was
and then he started
disappointed.
acting like that. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I could see
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's weird like how it can switch so fast too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Hmm. Yeah.
I'm proud of you for knowing better. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
also proud of the other version of you,
Mm.
like still tried, and like
Yeah.
through it
Hmm.
and got through it and.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That,
I'm
that's
sure
just
you
another
talk
thing.
to people too there. Like I'm sure after the
Mm-hmm.
fact you can say, hey, this asshole was
Mm.
whatever. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
But well, see, the thing is, like, if I were to say like he tried to finger me in the dance, they pretty much the response would be like, "Oh, really? Wow, what a surprise! That happens to
uh,
in every dance, It's not even really like that sort of thing isn't really worth mentioning almost. It's like if somebody
oh.
like tries something else, then like if somebody tries to like, pull out their like pull their pants down or like something like that, then like that's a situation where you might bring it up if they don't like if you tell them to stop and then they continue and they're being like I guess aggressive, that would really be the only scenario in which you would not be expected to handle it yourself.
Yep, 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 yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Like I remember this one time at my old club, the club I was describing earlier with the hierarchy
Mhm.
situation.
Okay.
I was talking to a customer and he had a lot of money. He was just like throwing 100 bills around basically. And so I was sitting with him. He was tipping me heavily, I was like just, dancing for him, talking to him, entertaining him. And then at one point he asked me if he could kiss me. And I told him no. And he begged me. He said, "Oh, please, just a little smooch, something like that." And I said no. And then he grabbed my head and forcibly kissed me on the lips.
That's
Um, yeah. And so I got up immediately, left, went up and told management what had happened. And the manager was like, "Oh, who was it?" And I told them. They looked at the camera. I could see like the gears rolling, the gears turning. I could see them thinking about like, "Wow, this person's spending a lot of money." And then the manager finally turned to me and said, "I'm sorry, there's not really anything we can do." And so they did nothing about it. But at the same time, there was a bouncer standing nearby who overheard the conversation. And after I left the conversation with the manager, the bouncer pulled me aside and just like confirmed to me who the customer was and said, "Okay, I'm going to go talk to him. And if I hear anything else, he's out of here." So it was basically the bouncer, the security person was going over the head of the manager on that decision and being like, "Yeah, that's not okay. I'm going to take care of that for you. If that happens again, like essentially I'm going to take care of it." So yeah, that's another thing I see a lot, just management refusing to take care of situations, but security being a lot more likely to do that.
weird. I mean, and I think it's because like security and you guys are kind of on the same, like you're under management, so management
Hmm.
they think the end goal, business,
Hmm.
money, profits,
Right.
whereas the security is like I'm a human being, just like you're a
Mhm.
human being.
Yeah, absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah, so it's very unfortunate. But like I feel like the management would learn or the customers would learn from management if the management actually gave a shit. Like
Right. Yeah, if things were actually enforced, if there were actually consequences for doing things like
consequences, yeah,
that.
consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrible. You think that money can get away with so much, you know?
Hmm.
So how do you know what your boundaries are?
I thought that my boundaries were going to be what was allowed. I didn't know what the rules were, and I was trying to figure out what are the rules? What am I allowed to do? What are people allowed to do? And that was like when I first started dancing, that's what I was thinking. But at
Like
this
you
point,
wanted
I
to
know
go
that the
by the book of
Mhm.
like what a stripper does, period.
Right, yeah, yeah. What am I
That
supposed to
makes a
do?
lot of
What?
sense.
Yeah,
That makes a
right.
lot. Okay, so my audience can be anyone from like, I don't know if you want to call them hobbyist guys or just
Yeah.
regular general public people are basically my audience. Like that's what you get, right?
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh,
like when you're
sure.
speaking to these people about your experiences, like what do you want them to like get from it? I guess is like
Yeah.
I would like to know that. Like I'm
Uh,
sure they would even like to know that, you know? Like
yeah.
when we talk, what do we want? You know? Like
Yeah. I think I want people to have to get like access to a perspective that they might not always be able to access. I want people to be able to learn more about what it's like in the clubs, what it's like to for dancers, because I feel like people have a lot of misconceptions about dancers. I know the people who come into the clubs tend to have a lot of misconceptions about dancers. Um, just
yeah.
from conversations I've had with them.
Oh, okay. So, okay. That's a good way to there's so many places we could go. Like I love what you
Yeah,
were saying earlier, but I also love what you just said there. Like we could go all these directions, but like
yeah,
or there's probably women that go in your club too.
yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh. There are.
And I don't know. I'm sure even without speaking to them, there might be even a vibe that you're like, they
Mm.
don't know anything, right? I mean, I know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that
It,
can happen.
yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes the women who come in are actually dancers, either from like other clubs or from like they're just on their day off, they're coming in sometimes. So like occasionally like the women who are there, like they do know like what's going on. And there are some women who are like sex workers in like other industries who will come into the clubs sometimes too. And so those the people who have those previous experiences,
Not a
they
weed whacker. A weed whacker.
I think somebody's mowing the lawn out there. Great timing,
What's
right?
it called? A leaf blower.
Oh, actually, it is a leaf blower. Yeah, you're right.
I'm from
Yeah, they were
LA.
they were mowing
I have
earlier. Now they're leaf blowing.
those.
Just doing all the noisy things right now. Yeah. Um, but there are a lot of women who come in from a lot of different walks of life too, and who come in either like with partners, with just like friends, a bachelorette party, that sort of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of different dynamics that you run into.
Who do you think knows less, like women or men?
Hmm. I think they know less in different ways, I guess. And
Ooh, okay.
so, um, so,
Very
so
intriguing.
yeah, something that people sometimes find surprising when I tell them is a lot of the time the people who cross boundaries the most, especially like during stage performances, tend to be women actually. And so I've had one dancer who was she'd been a dancer for like 10 years, I think, and
And she
the
was
way
a
she
dancer.
described it,
Oh,
yeah. Oh,
oh,
no, no, no. Sorry, she wasn't coming in. She's a friend of mine. I'm telling. So
her
the way that she
story. Her
explained,
story.
yeah,
Okay, okay, I got you.
right, right. The way that she talked about these interactions with like women who were just like breaking boundaries more so than even a lot of the male clientele, was she said basically they feel like they have basically the same equipment, so they have a right to just touch whatever you have. And so it's like there is kind of a sense of entitlement sometimes, certainly not universal. And I would say on average it's like a bell curve. So it's like on like the extreme ends where like people who are most respectful, at the clubs tend to be women, and people who are least respectful are sometimes women.
Oh,
And then
isn't that like completely interesting? Like,
yeah,
what a
right,
weird thing to like
right.
observe. Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems to, and I'm not going to say that all the most disrespectful are women because that's certainly not true. And I'm not going to say that all the most respectful are women because that's certainly not true either. But because everything is a range, everything is a gradient. You can't say
So great.
absolute,
So great.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like the when I do run into the like a lot of women who are just like, I'll be on stage and they'll actually like touch my vagina like while I'm on stage, like performing, and I feel like a lot of that just comes from this misconception of like, this attitude of, well, we're all girls, so like, it's fine. And uh
But that would never fly anywhere else.
right.
Like,
Um,
I don't even
right.
get the logic. I don't even really.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're drunk, that's the only
Yeah.
thing that I
Well,
can.
everybody's drunk for the most part.
Everybody's drunk, so like, you're right.
Yeah.
So maybe in a drunk
That's right.
bar, this could fly. But it's
Right.
not really. But I guess because someone's naked, close to naked,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
then I guess that's what makes it like in your head makes you want to go there. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, like it's mostly like I would say during like stage sets that I've noticed that. Whereas like when men tend to break those boundaries, it tends to be in private dances.
Private.
It tends to be like hidden away. It's not
Oh,
like right
so
there in
one's
front
for
of everybody.
show, one's for pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. That seems to kind of be the feeling that I get about that. And and there is a lot of just kind of this attitude of like using the strip club to prove something. Um, in a way like, oh yeah, I'm edgy, so I go to strip clubs. I kind of like get that vibe sometimes from people, or like, oh yeah, like I don't know, it's yeah, it's hard to explain exactly, but yeah, there's just kind of like this, it does feel like a lot of that is for show, that like, touching, crossing those boundaries, it's like, oh, look what I got to do, whereas like those boundaries being crossed in private, that's from a different motivation.
Yeah, like trying to be like a baddie, like a girl.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
right. Uh-huh,
so
that sort of
it's
thing.
a little nuts. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense because it's at the
No.
expense of other people.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But yeah,
So
and
what cost do you need that kind of validation in a way? Like it is validation that they're after. Some
yeah,
sort of identity validation that I'm this type of girl.
for sure. But
Like
yeah, again, those are exceptions though. I don't want to make
I'm
it
gonna say
seem like I'm saying,
everybody.
like
Yeah.
women are terrible in the strip clubs. Like largely largely the women that I interact with in strip clubs tend to be like pretty respectful. It's just like uh but most of the time people don't touch my vagina when I'm on stage, and like sometimes that happens. So yeah, those are like the outliers, but yeah, it's very, yeah, it's a very, very strange dynamic in a way.
Can I tell you a story? One time I went one time and I felt
Uh-huh.
kind of depressed. And I don't know
Oh.
why I felt depressed, but I just
Uh-huh.
felt like I could feel like someone's like hustle or pain or
Mm-hmm.
something that I was
Mm-hmm.
with a guy at the time, and like I
Yeah.
didn't like how he was looking at everybody, lusting over them. It was a
Uh-huh.
combination of a lot of things, like me
Yeah.
being in their shoes,
Uh-huh.
him being in his shoes, wondering what he's
Mhm.
thinking and feeling and
Uh-huh.
getting excited about that isn't me. And it was a lot. It was a
Yeah.
lot for me.
Interesting.
It depends
Yeah.
on who you go with too. If you go with friends, it's another story. You go
Yeah.
with a boyfriend, it's like
Uh-huh.
it's so tense. It's so
Yeah. Yeah, that's
tense.
really interesting. So I feel like at the club I currently work at, I don't see a lot of like hetero couples come in.
Okay, so I was
But
I was unique, I guess.
Right, but well, you wouldn't have been unique at the other club that I went to
Oh, right.
previously, though. That there were definitely a lot more couples there, and it was interesting because as dancers, like most of us were very wary of couples in that club
Oh,
because
okay. What did you think? Yeah. What did?
yeah, so basically there were like three types of like so I'm just talking about hetero couples right now. So it's a man and
Oh,
a woman
three
who
types of
work
these
together.
guys. Okay, I got
But yeah, three
you.
types of couples like and so basically it kind of felt like there was one type of couple where it was the girl's idea. She wanted to be the cool girlfriend and go to the strip club. She was not cool. She so
Yeah, like
yeah, I
fail,
got down with them.
fail. F
Yeah.
minus. Okay, F minus. All right. How do you know that? How do you know that from her face?
Oh,
Resting bitch
well,
face?
so I sit down with them. I'm talking to them, I'm making sure I'm talking to both of them, not crossing any boundaries. I usually sit next to the girl instead of the guy, to
Oh,
like, yeah, just try not to step on toes,
God,
that
you're
sort of
so
thing.
finessed. You're so
Yeah.
finessed. Like insane what you have to learn. Like
Yeah, it's a
so
whole
subtle.
bit of etiquette. Yeah. And so we'd be talking, and then I notice the mouth is very closed, the eyes are going like looking forward. The guy is like talking to me and seems enthused about the conversation. She is not happy. And then he goes to get drinks, and in some cases she just doesn't talk. In other cases, she turns and she's like, "What the fuck are you doing? Are you trying to steal my man? Are you trying to fuck him? Blah 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 blah. Get away, get the fuck away from me," that sort of thing. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that
So
word,
she
but
will no, you could totally say that word.
uh,
She would wait
yeah,
till he left.
yeah, and then communicate that to me, and then I'd be like, "Okay, bye," and then I just leave at that point. So that's like one type of couple, the not cool
And
girlfriend.
not cool, cool girl. I love these labels. Okay.
Yeah.
Next.
um, and then let's see, there was another type where again it was the girl's idea, but she's very bi, she's very into girls, and she's very excited to be there. So
Oh,
she
she's
is
bi, you
all
said.
over you. Yeah, so she's there with her man, but she's very excited about the naked women. And so sh that's typically where I'd see like a lot of that boundary crossing. Actually, a lot of the time I would get propositioned by like women in that they're like, "Hey, we're looking for a unicorn. You should come home with us," that sort of thing. And but yeah, just like very, very excited to be there. And like um yeah, and a lot of the time actually it felt like the dude was less happy about like me being with them at that point. So it would be more like the girl being like talking to me and being like super animated and everything, and he's just kind of like staring off, like not looking very pleased with the situation
You
because
mean
he's
like
not.
jealous or like just
Yeah,
disinterested?
that's kind of how it felt.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So yeah, that's the other not cool couple. Just kind of like reverse it. And then there's the actual
Yeah,
there's the
like
actual
reverse.
cool couple, where it wasn't even clear like whose idea it was to come necessarily. Like they both just seemed like they wanted to be there, and they were both like, you know, chill with talking to you. They were both like, they might do a couple dance together, or they might do dances separately, but they were supportive of each other doing that. It just seemed like there wasn't like that level of like jealousy and insecurity and stuff going on with either of them. The actual cool couple, very rare,
It
which is
sounds
why,
really rare. It
yeah,
honestly does. It
yeah.
honestly sounds very rare. God.
Yeah, so that's why like in that club setting it was very yeah, you very few dancers would regularly talk to couples. There were some who like that was just kind of like they knew how to kind of work that dynamic, and so they would like try. But yeah, most of the time if I could avoid talking to couples in that club, I would.
It was a
Because
dread thing.
most of the time, yeah, most of the time it's not going to be a good experience.
All right, so
So
you hear that, couples out there? Now you know the etiquette. You gotta be
yeah,
the
be
cool
the
one.
actual
You gotta
cool
be lucky
couple.
number three. Lucky number three.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. But yeah, it's a different dynamic at the club I currently work at. I feel like I don't run into like straight couples that much. And it feels like it's generally a different dynamic. Like when it's I don't know, there's different dynamics for everything. So there's positive and negative dynamics with like any
Any type of
pairing, but
person, right? Yeah.
sure, yeah, of course. But yeah, those were like specifically like the dynamics I seem to run into with like straight monogamous seeming or like kind of open relationship type couples. So
Are you all in the know when someone walks through the door of what you're getting? Like, do you guys kind of all look at each other like, we know who you are, we know who that is? You kind of
you
do
know,
that.
we watch the drinks that they order.
Drinks matter. Okay.
We watch like
Matter.
what how they're dressed. If they're dressing to try to look like they have money versus if they look like they actually have money. Like there's
A
a lot of
casual dresser has money.
yeah, yeah, sometimes. Or
Sometimes.
they're just casual.
What?
Yeah,
Depends on your
like
definition of casual, right?
right. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the quality of the casual wear, I guess. So
Right,
yeah,
there
there's
you go.
like
Yeah, quality.
yeah, right. So there's just very, very subtle things that you look for.
So what's the
And
drink thing about?
oh, well, a lot of the time, people who just like go in and order like a a beer, like a Bud Light, a Corona, something like that. Like a lot of the time, they don't tend to be high spenders. Whereas if somebody goes in and they order like a 18-year-old scotch, generally that person has a little bit more
Oh,
money.
that's a great
Yeah.
indicator, the
Mhm.
scotch.
Yeah, just like
I
seeing like
can see
what
that
they're ordering.
because it's got an old school thing about it, right?
Yeah, right. And that was just kind of an example, I guess. Like there's a, just like the higher shelf type drinks. And like sometimes you can't really tell like what somebody ordered. So I've even had situations where I walked up to somebody and who like looked like they'd ordered an expensive drink. And then I start talking to them and they're like, "Oh, I don't know what the fuck this is. Like they just gave it to me and like I don't really like it. I'm more of a like beer person." And then like the more I like talk to them, not that I'm judging people based on their preferences, but it was just like clear that they didn't actually have money, even though like the drink made a like
Like a
indicated at
statement. Yeah, yeah,
first that they had money. So then I was just like, well, I hope you enjoy your next drink more, and just like walked off. So it's just like sometimes like there's a slight clue that can be like misleading and then you kind of figure that out. But yeah, it really depends on what you're looking for too. Because I used to like be a lot more of a hustler than I am now. Um so at this point, like after so I had that injury, and
yeah.
during the 2 months that I wasn't able to dance, I was just kind of rethinking my relationship with dancing, and was just thinking about like really the reason that I started doing it was because I saw it as kind of a fun and interesting way to make money. And I realized that as I'd gotten like caught up in the club idea of like, oh, if you don't make good money in a night, like that night was a waste, and like, oh, you got to make a certain amount for it to be worth your time, and like the sort of things that people say a lot, that dancers say a lot. I just kind of like was rethinking whether that was something that I agreed with. And I realized for me personally, it's totally fine for other people to have like, certain goals or certain things that they want out of the club. But for me personally, it's not so much about a money, like a dollar amount, as about it's an occupation that I enjoy. And I realized that I didn't
The
enjoy it as much.
quality of the time you're there, the quality, how you feel,
Right,
the
right,
experience,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I realized I wasn't enjoying it when I was so focused on a dollar amount. And so like when I came back to the club, I decided that I was only going to talk to people that I found interesting, attractive, or both.
Interesting.
And that's like my new strategy. And I feel like it works for me because I end up spending my night talking to people that I'm actually enjoying the conversation. I'm enjoying their company, and they can tell, they can tell I'm not just trying to get their money. that I'm like actually appreciating them as people and enjoying my time with them. Again, I don't want to make it seem like the way that I think about it is the only way, and that that's like a better way, because I know like for some people, like they're in this to make a lot of money and in like one go and everything, and that's totally fine. But for me personally, I enjoy dancing. I enjoy performing. I think pole dancing is a really amazing art, and that's something that I enjoy doing. I enjoy expressing my sensuality through dancing, and I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy like the just like the flirtatious aspect of things, but I enjoy that if I'm actually engaged with the person. And so yeah, since I came back and have had like that different philosophy, I've just really enjoyed it a lot more.
A lot more. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, they sound like kind of like mini dates, actually.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, in a way, it's kind of like a very brief blind date.
Yeah, like I
Yeah,
mean, damn, okay.
yeah.
Not a
So
bad way to work.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I love about dancing. I love that I feel like I can actually form these authentic, albeit very brief connections with people.
Do they come
Um,
back? Of course they come back, right? Sometimes they come back, right?
Yeah, yeah, sometimes. Sometimes I'll see people. I mean, there'll be regulars, but there'll also be people who are traveling, they don't really live there, so
Oh, right,
they'll be
right.
there.
And
I'll
that's
see them
happened to
and
me
everything
where
later. Uh,
I've really liked someone and they weren't from
uh,
the area.
yeah, uh-huh.
So hard saying bye or
Yeah.
like just knowing that that's what that was.
Hmm.
That's all that was.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of but something I run into a lot is people just like not believing me that I'm not trying to like just hustle them. Which I mean, obviously I'm there to make money. It's my job. So people shouldn't have the expectation that I'm not there to make money, which a lot of people do. Or they think that, I'm a bad person if I'm trying to make money at my job, which is another just
It's
makes no
hurtful.
sense to
It's
me.
very hurtful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I've had a
It's
lot
like
of
an attack on
Mhm.
something you can't really control. Like it's your life
Right.
and it's your
Right. Uh-huh.
survival. It's an
Yeah.
attack. It really is, you know.
Right. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah,
On all sides. It's
Mhm.
firing on all sides. Like your the way you make a living and your
Uh-huh.
character. Like those are huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge things.
Yeah,
Like people
absolutely.
need to know this. Like it's a
Uh-huh.
big deal when that happens because it hurts.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Especially when I do genuinely like someone, I'm
You can't have
very
both. Like
I'm
what's that all about? Why can't you be
right,
both things? Like someone who has
right.
to work there
Uh-huh.
and actually you can't have fun at your job? Like
Yeah,
I
right.
don't get it.
Yeah. And so like the way I think about it is like with dancing, I'm selling a fantasy in a way. Um, but that's not really any more a fantasy than like any other sort of interaction in like
Well,
a
what's the fantasy? Have you ever thought about what that actually means? What is the
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So the way I think about it is like I'm selling people this idea that we have this connection. It's
But you don't?
emotional. It We do, and we don't. So it's real and it's a fantasy, and that's what people like. People don't see that it can be both sometimes. Because obviously, like the persona that I present at the club, I try to be authentic, but it's not gonna be fully who I am. It's a version of me that I'm presenting. So it
Oh,
is
I
a
see what you're
fantasy,
saying. I
right?
see what you're saying. Yeah. Like you're
Yeah,
at
like
kaboom level as opposed
right.
to like
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah, so it's not just, everyday me. There's a certain type of me that comes out of the club, and like this is who I am here. But that doesn't mean that I'm not trying to be authentic. And I think that authenticity is something that I value. Even in like an industry where people think that that isn't possible. I think it is, and I'm certainly not the only dancer who is authentic at the club. And so, but yeah, I think there's this misconception that because there is that element of fantasy, it can't also be genuine.
But it's interesting though because you're using fantasy, and I'm thinking to myself like, but it's not even your fantasy. Like, aren't you pleasing them by being this other person? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
so
I'm
I feel like you're
feeling
making their
fantasy.
wish come true, yet
Mhm.
they want you to be something else. Again, like, make up your mind.
I think people just don't really know what they want a lot of the time, and they don't have a clear understanding of what's happening in the club. They think um I don't know, they just don't really understand it, and they don't really know what they want. And so but yeah, I remember recently, like I was doing a private dance with somebody, and he kept asking me, like during the dance, like he was very respectful, like as far as like keeping physical boundaries and stuff. He was very respectful. We had chatted a few times throughout the night, and then did a private dance. But then he asked me like, "Will you please go home with me?" Like, and he told me, he was like, I just like I'm going through this terrible divorce, and like I just like I haven't been with anyone for like 7 years, and like I finally like feel this connection with somebody that I haven't felt in such a long time. And he was like saying this to me, and i I remember just trying to tell him like, hey, I can't do that for you. Like, I'm glad that I get to have that connection with you for this moment, but I can't go home with you. And then that was pretty much at closing. I think we finished the dance like after closing, actually. And so then I went and like changed into my street clothes, and then like was leaving, and actually my partner was picking me up from work that night. And so when I was leaving, I kind of like was shuffling out at the same time as the last customers, and he was one of the last customers. And so he saw me as I was leaving in my street clothes, and saw me get in the car with my partner, obviously my partner. And I think maybe he just kind of connected the dots at that point, and just kind of realized, oh, like this, like, I think some people just don't realize that I have a life outside of the club, and I can't be that fantasy for them outside of the club. It's like they think they've found this connection, and they're so excited, and they're like, oh my god, like we've got to like you know have a relationship, and they like kind of blow it up into like proportions that aren't realistic for what it actually is, which is ultimately my occupation. And so on some level, like I almost think of myself as like, or as dancers, as like kind of sex therapists in a way. Like we're kind of, there's a lot of people who come in there who like haven't had a lot of intimacy for a long time, and haven't had a lot of connection for a long time, and they come into the club, and it's, I don't know, for me it's like I want them to go away with the belief that they can have that. They get to see themselves experience that connection. They get to see themselves living that fantasy of like having a sensual, emotional connection with someone. And then they can go outside of the club and be like, wow, that is possible. I just lived it. And then they can, like, if they understand that it's just a fantasy, that what happens in the club, it is a fantasy. There is some genuine like connection in some cases, but ultimately they need to find that outside of the club, in like a relationship with a person that they see all of them, not just the version of them that comes into the club. And so yeah, for me, that's basically what I want, me as a dancer to be for people. Just helping them to
like a practice
yeah.
for getting themselves out there again.
Yeah, I guess in a way, or just kind of like realizing that they have that capacity when they might not believe that they have that capacity, like that they can be seen as interesting and attractive to someone. And a lot of people have such like low self-esteem, they're not even like, trying to form those connections because they've just kind of been believing for so long that they can't have those connections,
Are
whether
you
it's
talking about like regular guys you would just see on the street? I mean, are these
yeah,
they're not like, shocking, oh, it makes sense you're not with someone. Like it's just regular guys,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah, just
right.
regular guys.
Isn't that
Um,
insane that
but
they do
they've
that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Insane to me. Yeah.
mhm, right. But I would say a lot of the time the people I talk to in the club have experienced a lot of like relationship trauma, sometimes like sexual trauma, and they just have these beliefs about themselves. Um and I'm not saying this is everyone, but I would say a lot of the people who frequent the clubs, these things are kind of true of them. That they've experienced a lot of these like relationship traumas, sexual traumas, and they uh, don't really um, believe in their ability to like have a healthy relationship again. To have that
It's
kind of
amazing how they're guided to like to go to you guys. Like,
mm,
I mean, that's an I want to just kind of highlight what you said. Like, I love that you're talking about like how my favorite part I think is just like the part where you're saying the cliche about,
mhm,
oh, I'm a dollar sign. Like that's
mhm,
got to
mhm.
stop. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
because it's such a loop. Like
Hmm.
I've heard it 1,000 times. I'm sure you've heard it a million times. Like,
Absolutely.
but it's like in any other job, like no one's guilting you about
Mm,
being there.
yeah,
Like, are
that's
you gotta be freaking kidding me? Who's gonna do that? You're gonna go to the dentist.
right.
You're like,
I can't
God,
believe
I
you
can't
took money
believe.
for making me a hamburger. Like, oh my gosh, you're such a terrible person.
Person. Oh, it's the worst thing ever. Like, and you're
Yeah.
doing so much. You're
Uh-huh.
giving your body, your attention, your energy, your care for a
Yeah.
stranger. Like, it's a lot
Mhm.
of giving. Like,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you deserve to have a compensation, and money is not even that special. Like,
Mhm.
oh, so I feel for you. Like, that was
Mhm.
my favorite part. Do you
Mhm.
have a favorite part?
Yeah, no, I think that was really good too. Just and honestly, like I just feel like I've enjoyed just kind of jumping through like a lot of
Scenario.
different
Yeah,
topics.
the scenarios and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I guess ultimately, like I just want I want those ideas, that these misconceptions that people have about like who strippers are, what strippers are, to just kind of like not like kind of get broken down, I guess.
What would be
Because
like a fantasy strip club? Like the ideal place, the ideal customers, like what ideal
yeah.
management, like how, like you walk in the
Oh
door,
wow.
what happens? You walk in the door, what happens? We're gonna manifest this right now.
Okay, okay. Dancer owned strip club would be great. I
Okay.
don't know about any of those. I hope they exist, but
Well, it has to be woman owned basically, because you can't really. I mean, I guess you could be an ex male dancer.
mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
ex male dancer. Okay, so
Uh,
dancer owned strip club.
yeah.
Okay.
I think it would be really cool if people could express like whatever gender identity they want to. I know a lot of dancers at my club who don't actually identify as female,
Okay.
but present femininely because that's what they're expected to do in the club setting.
Is that what they
Um,
want to do?
a lot of them know. Like I've heard people
Okay.
say, "Oh, I'm so exhausted from pretending to be a girl all day," and like stuff like
Oh.
that. So just yeah, there's a lot of, and I think the same thing is sometimes true in like male strip clubs. I don't know a whole lot about male strip clubs, but I do know there are some like male strippers who like are expected to kind of present as like very gay when they're actually not gay.
Not
And
gay.
yeah, and some
Whoa.
people like don't mind that. Some people think like from what I've heard, some people think it's kind of fun. But other people are like, man, like I want to be a male stripper. My only avenue is to be in this club where I have to like basically act in stereotypically quote unquote gay ways. Um,
Mm.
so it just it seems like there's this dichotomy where it's like you're in a certain type of strip club, you can only be a certain type of gender, you know. And there's some clubs that will do like there's a club I know in town that does every gender night where they like allow trans performers, and it's like, well, that's cool that you have an every gender night. Why isn't that every night? You know?
Yeah, so you want
So
like a blend
yeah,
every night. So
right, right.
customers are a blend too then. Wouldn't that mean
Yeah,
customers are a
absolutely.
blend?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so that would be the dream.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, just allowing people to express themselves the way they want. One thing I love about my current club is there is a lot more freedom of expression. Like the club I worked at before this one, we had to wear 6-inch heels. I think that was actually in the contract. We had to wear 6-inch heels at least. And we had to wear like were requirements for the outfit types. They didn't really allow like if I came in with like my pink hair, you know, they wouldn't let me dance probably. I would have to wear a wig.
So they have a very specific look, sounds
Yeah,
like.
yeah. So that's true of a lot of clubs. At my club, it's like you have to present as feminine, but you have a lot more freedom in how you present that way. So so it's like a, a little more freedom. It's still not complete freedom, but it's still like worlds better than at a lot of clubs.
Like beauty standards change at the elite
Yeah,
clubs or whatever
yeah,
they are. Yeah.
right. And there's like different body types that you'll see like at my club versus the other one. It was like
Other
they
ones.
only hired like very slender people.
Like
And
they didn't have thick
they're
girls there. They didn't have thick girls.
no. I was actually told by a friend that her friend tried to like audition there, and they told her she couldn't dance there because she had stretch marks. An extremely talented and very like you know skilled performer who does really well at other clubs. But yeah, they told her that she couldn't dance, and they gave her the reason that it was because she had stretch marks. So yeah, there's just a lot of different things.
Oh my God, I'm sweating so bad because I have this thing off and it's New York. I'm in New York in the summer.
Uh, yeah, my sister used to live there.
Oh
So
yeah? In the
yeah, it's
city?
funny. She lived in Bronxville.
I
Do
know
you know where
exactly
that
where that is.
is? This well, this is just kind of a short
Yeah,
little
tell me,
story,
please.
but yeah. Well, there were like a couple of people who were like kind of facing off to each other, and like there weren't even like any punches or anything like yet, but the DJ like across the room saw like their body language, and I saw him just like streak towards them. And as like one guy got ready to punch the other one, the DJ just grabbed him and basically like grabbed him around the arms, physically picked him up and carried him out of the club and just threw him out essentially. So like before that like fight could even start, the DJ like
Two
you know
guys?
keyed in,
Two guys?
yeah, two guys. The DJ was just like keyed into the situation, was like, oh, I see where this is going, like just streaked over, took care of that situation. Like that's not even the DJ's job. The
I
DJ is
love
like
that
security.
though. I love
But
that.
yeah, right. So there just has to be like this hyper awareness of everything that's happening. And like I'm friends with one of the security people at my club, and he was telling me the other day like he got like a gun pulled on him in the parking lot, and he said his heart rate didn't even increase because he's just so used to that sort of situation. He knew he wasn't like based on the scenario, he knew he wasn't going to get shot, or he was pretty sure. So he wasn't even like, you know, didn't even get that response. He was just like put that gun away and like basically just ended the situation like before it started.
For
But
what reason though? Like,
oh, so So I guess someone had their trailer stolen, and then they called their buddies for like reinforcements. Their buddies showed up with baseball bats, and one of them had a rifle. And when the security guy told them that they couldn't come into the club, their weapons, he had the gun pulled on him, and so he basically just had to like talk them down and be like, and convince them not to come in, and like, but again, he told me his heart rate didn't even increase because he's so used to dealing with situations like that. He just knew how to handle it, and it didn't even.
You didn't
But
even
yeah,
flinch, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, you have to, I guess, have that temperament and be able to, and also just that experience and like develop that level of competence with dealing with situations and keeping them from escalating.
And reading
I've
people,
never,
reading people, reading their moods,
yeah,
reading what they're
yeah,
gonna really do versus what they say they're gonna do, right?
right, exactly. So yeah, it's just it's crazy to me the things that they're doing in the background constantly that a lot of the time people aren't even aware of. Um, but just like keeping everything like
Running.
flowing,
Mhm.
yeah, and keeping situations from getting out of hand and stuff. So it's a hard job. I have a lot of respect for people who work in security in strip clubs, and I've developed some really like positive relationships with the security within different clubs, and so it's really
Oh, that's nice. I like
yeah, it's
that.
really good dynamic.
I'll
Yeah.
relay that to my friend. I'll relay.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Talking about your nonprofit and then maybe going back if we have a little bit more time, and if not, we
Yeah,
don't. But yeah,
yeah,
let's focus on that, and then
yeah,
we'll see how that goes.
yeah. All right. Well, it's called Club Moxie. And that
Oh,
I
Moxie. Okay.
that was my dancer name when I first moved to Portland. And I don't dance as Moxie anymore, but I just really liked the way that I guess I define the word Moxie as like courage with attitude, and I just kind of see that as like the spirit of like dancers and sex workers, and it's like facing all these difficulties with this composure and just yeah, I think it's really amazing.
I love that you
So
named it after like a club, which is really cool.
yeah. So it's not just for dancers. And I'm partnering really closely with the Cupcake Girls, as well as some other organizations. And so it's it's really free for anyone who is within like the sex work industry or has been or has experienced trauma related to like human trafficking, just like it's a pretty broad, I guess, in a way, but just kind of there's a specific like sort of subset that falls under this whole umbrella that kind of overlaps a lot. But anyways, so basically what I'm starting with is just offering free fitness classes, free Pilates classes for anyone within like that demographic. So just basically sex workers, people who have been in the sex industry, and um, and then also like free healthy cooking classes. So really and really the reason for like the fitness class, the healthy cooking, I feel like it's just really helpful to have a community that's just kind of focused around wellness in a way. So I'm not thinking of it in terms of like uh oh yeah, you should come to these fitness classes to like see you like look better or like anything like that. It's just
Feeling good, feeling good.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
quality of life, quality of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because something that I know I've experienced as a dancer is just kind of this disconnection between mind and body, where like when I'm pole dancing, I might be like uh dropping into the splits from like high up on the pole, or just like pole dancing in general, like there components of it that hurt, and they're supposed to. You're like hanging from your skin on a metal pole.
I've gotten bruises like from one class, so
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When
they
I first
they
started,
go away, don't they? They go away, don't they?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, when I first started, I looked like I had a disease. I had like so many bruises.
Oh my God! And your
But,
what is it? What is it? Your skin just knows now, or what? I don't get it.
I think I've just learned how to move
How to not
in a way that
get up.
doesn't bruise me up as much, but I still get
Oh,
bruises, and I
oh,
still experience like soreness and in the moment, like when I'm dancing on stage, like I'm having fun. I'm like performing for the audience, like in real time. I'm like figuring out like what works, what's making people engaged, and like doing more of that and that sort of thing. So I'm very focused on like what I'm doing, not really thinking about like the pain that I'm experiencing. So I feel like that ends up just kind of creating, like, even though it's something that I enjoy, it does really create this kind of mind body disconnect.
disconnect.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I feel like that also happens a lot with just like uh doing private dances. Like I'm using my body in to and I'm acting like sensual. I'm uh putting on a performance, but that might not be how I feel in that moment. And so it's just kind of like you have to use your body in ways that are sometimes going against like what your mind wants um, in those moments. And so, and I'm sure that's probably true of people in other areas of sex work as well. And so, yeah, so that's like with Pilates. I think that's an exercise form that kind of ties together a lot of like Western and Eastern philosophies of exercise. But there is a lot of kind of focus on like breathing and connection to your body and how it's feeling as you're exercising. And so I think that's just like something that I want to be available to people who often might experience this kind of disconnect. And I want this to be in a environment where they feel safe, where they feel like they're not going to be judged for like what they do, their occupation, where it's kind of like that's understood, and they can like talk about work or not talk about work, whatever they want to do. They can use their real name, they can use their dancer name, like um so that's
great.
basically what people can do at this point. Yeah, and then
Like,
as it gets closer, I'll be uploading more information on the website. I'll be like connecting social media accounts and that sort of thing. So
are these
but
virtual classes too, or just Portland, Oregon?
um So at this point, just Portland, Oregon.
Okay, so all the
Yeah.
Portland people. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, memo received.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But I'm planning to expand eventually if all goes well here.
Yeah, you got
Um,
to feel it out. Like everything's about getting your bearings, right?
yeah,
So, and you want to
definitely.
see who joins. Yeah, it's there's a lot to figure out still, but
Yeah.
I'm very optimistic. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I really do live for like tribes and your
Hmm.
people.
Yes.
You know, like I
Absolutely.
feel like I already knew you even before I knew you because of just this
Yeah.
connection that's so big. It's a big deal, like
Yeah. Definitely.
like I've experienced similar things,
Mhm. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and you
That's
don't
really
even need to
cool.
know, but you know that I have.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
love that. And I love dancers. I love sex workers. I think that there's just a lot of amazing people. And so I'm really excited to like have this start this community. And oh, and then there's also like we're doing healthy cooking classes. That's probably just because I really love cooking.
Yeah,
And
yeah. You sound like you could cook because you
yeah,
mentioned it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
What's your
but
sign?
also
You never told me your sign. What's your sign?
oh, Aquarius.
Oh, I'm a cusp of Aquarius, Pisces.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Some people aren't into signs, but I feel the Aquarius in me a lot. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like
Yeah.
my mind doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
you're no, that explains your humanitarian stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm
Yeah,
with
I
you.
can tell that.
And your openness to
Mhm.
like what you're saying about your fantasy with the the merging of everybody, inclusivity
Yeah,
and all that. Like that's important. Oh, I
that's
can see. I can make the connections now. Like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Because you
But
guys are
yeah,
so open minded, so open minded.
yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes I feel like I'm too open-minded, but
yeah.
you
You
know.
just want everybody to catch up, right? That's all it is. Want
Yeah, I
everybody to
can
catch up.
let it
Come on
go.
down. Come on down. Yeah. I don't think there's such thing as too open minded. So
Yeah.
you're
It,
talking. You're preaching to the choir here. So.
yeah. Maybe I'm too open-minded for my own good sometimes. Is kind of what
But
I mean.
like what you're, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think it'll be just really fun to like share that love of cooking and then like so there's a lot of homelessness experienced within the dancer community, at least in Portland.
Oh, that's
You
like
know,
kind of
yeah.
surprising. I know that sounds ignorant, but it is surprising, actually.
No, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like this idea that dancers, oh, just make so much money,
So
you
much
know.
money.
But I would say overall, on average, dancers make significantly less money than somebody working like a typical 9 to 5 job. Plus,
Because of
I don't
crashing
know
and
makeup.
burning, probably crashing and burning. Like,
Yeah, and it's so inconsistent. Like you might have a good
oh,
enough
so
week
even
one
even
night.
when you take emotions out, you're talking about just logistically, it can be
Yeah, even just
inconsistent.
logistically, yeah. Like
Oh,
emotions are definitely a part of it. But
so
like
dry
being able to
seasons
show up
are tough then.
consistently,
So
yes. The slow season is horrendous.
how long
And
does that last?
I would say in Portland around like November to February was probably like the worst of it.
The holidays.
Um, yeah. And then like New
And
Year's
then it's
Eve, like,
party. Then it's
I will not go to the strip club, you know.
yeah, like
That's
I'm not allowed. Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, and I don't know any strip clubs that offer benefits to dancers. Like if you ask if you go into a club and ask, do you offer benefits, like you're gonna get laughed at, you know. That's
What
just
about
not
like unemployment? That's possible, isn't it?
well, we're not technically employees, most of us.
Oh, I
So
hear you. So it's not even
I,
under that kind of
right, uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's yeah, it's just it's very difficult. And so yeah, so like don't get me wrong, like there are dancers who like make a lot of money. But those tend to be people who show up consistently, who hustle like crazy all the time. So people actually get annoyed by how much they hustle sometimes. And like yeah, but even that is it comes with an emotional cost, I'm sure.
And
Being so
sacrifice with
on all
friends
the
and like
time.
connections.
Yeah,
Yeah.
by isolating yourself within like
Isolating yourself within the yeah. Making
yeah,
money the number one reason and then
yeah,
everything else takes a back seat.
yeah,
It's a big
absolutely.
deal. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, so like yeah, the but no, I'm not surprised that it's surprising that there to you that there are that that's a big thing within the dancer community, because I think that a
Yeah.
lot of people are surprised when they hear that.
Well, I
Um,
think for women, I'm saying women, but obviously I mean sex workers when I say this. I think that there's a shame and money tied into your looks and how successful you are.
yeah,
And if you have to
absolutely.
admit that you're a stripper or a sex
Mm-hmm.
worker and you're not making it,
Uh-huh.
it's your fault. It's all you.
Yeah.
You're not this
Uh-huh.
enough. You're not that enough. It's
Yeah.
like the
No,
shame is
I hear
so
that a lot.
crazy.
Mhm.
It's insane.
Absolutely.
Like, and so
Yeah.
of course you're gonna keep it to yourself. Oh yeah, I'm hustling. I'm making. Like you're not
Mhm.
gonna say that. It's embarrassing.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
no.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. And another aspect of the housing issue is something I've run into personally. It's very hard to verify your income.
Yeah.
I even I had an apartment that I was living in. I had been paying rent every month, but I had a cosigner um, because I wasn't able to verify my income and get a cosigner. That ended up being a very bad situation. I'm not going to get into it. But when I tried to stay in the same apartment without a cosigner, I had bank statements that showed that I made more than 3 times their
The requirement.
necessary, like uh, the requirement. Yeah, they wouldn't accept because the deposits were cash. They weren't from a company. I had been living there and paying rent for about 6 months at this point, but they wouldn't take my income verification because it was my deposits were cash. And so I had to move out of that apartment.
They got nervous.
Uh,
They got
and
nervous.
yeah, right. And so there's just yeah, but that was like it was difficult for me to even get that place to begin with a cosigner, you know. So it's just very
So it doesn't
difficult
even just end
to
at the slow season. It ends with the landlord and the other things too. Yeah,
yeah.
I've been there too, by the
Yeah.
way. We're trying to prove
Uh-huh.
and get an ally who actually has a job that is like, I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever qualifies. Yeah, so I've been
Right. Yeah, and then that puts you in sometimes in a compromised position
very
if
compromising
you're dependent
positions.
on someone else. So yeah, it's just like I feel like for some dancers, even if they can technically afford an apartment, it just comes with so much hassle and so
Or
much
what does afford
difficulty.
even mean? It's not always about just having
Yeah,
money.
right, right, absolutely.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a difficult situation. Yeah,
so much for independence.
uh-huh. Right.
Yeah, dude. Like,
Uh,
you know, so
yeah.
this is actually the limit for me because I do have to go. But
Oh,
when
okay.
I end the
Absolutely.
recording and just I feel like we got everything I feel
Yeah.
like I'm
Yeah.